Cambridge English, one of the biggest institutions for English proficiency tests in the world, and you need to know about them. These exams are becoming more and more important for students getting into university or trying to get a great job, and the chances are you'll have to prepare some students for them at some point. But what are these exams? Where do you even begin? What is the B2 First? What books do you need? And why is the use of English so damn horrible? Well, that's where I come in. I'm Will from Enchanted ESL, and I've been preparing students for the Cambridge English test since I started out teaching English back in 2015. I know these tests inside out. Whether it's tutoring individuals or preparing whole year groups, I've seen it all. And I want to share that. You see, there are loads of resources on the internet that are designed for students preparing for these exams. Teacher Phil is one, and To The Point English with Ben is another, and they do a fantastic job. I'm certain they're responsible for so many students passing. But there's very little out there for teachers. Things like how to give feedback for the speaking test or the writing tasks, what kind of language you need to target in class, and how to know whether your students are ready to take the test. I'm going to cover all that and plenty more in this series of videos on preparing for the Cambridge. For the rest of this video, we'll look at the Cambridge English institution itself and go over what exams are on offer. And then we'll talk about whether Cambridge English is the right choice for your students or whether there might be a better alternative. Okay, so let's look at Cambridge English. It is part of the University of Cambridge in the UK, and while it's changed its name a few times, it's been around since 1913 when it did its first proficiency test for non-native speakers. It's respected and recognised all around the world, and particularly in Europe, its qualifications are the baseline for a lot of jobs and university places. It is the creme de la creme and one of the biggest providers of English qualifications. It does get a little bit confusing because there are the Cambridge English exams and then there are other English proficiency exams done by Cambridge English, like the IELTS. The IELTS is a little different and mostly it's required for students or migrants who want to go to the UK. We're just going to focus on the Cambridge English exams, which are much more widespread. And there are a few of them targeting different levels of English. Here we can see the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. This is the international scale for rating proficiency in all languages, not just English. There are 6 levels. A1 is the lowest, and along with A2 make up the beginner stages. B1 and B2 are intermediate, and C1 and C2 are advanced, with C2 being the highest qualification you can get. Cambridge has exams for all 6 levels, but by far and away the most popular one is the B2 First exam. This is a marker of fluency required for universities and a lot of the workplace, especially in international business. Basically anything where students need to communicate frequently in English. Having a B2 opens a lot of doors. The C1 Advanced exam is also important. In most countries it's required for people to teach English in schools. In fact, I have quite a few students who need to get the C1 for exactly this reason. Then you also have the A2 Key and the B1 Proficiency. These are less useful in the world of employment, but I've prepared a lot of school children for these exams. For example, here in Spain, bilingual high schools require an A2 or a B1 level for students to enter. There is an A1 exam that students can do at school, but it's basically pointless. It doesn't get you anything. And finally, there's the C2 Proficiency. I'll admit I don't get much demand for this as a teacher. Usually students who are preparing for this are capable enough to do it on their own. They don't need me. And it's pretty rare for students to get to that level anyway. I have helped a few students with it in the past, but it's mainly for translation work or for people who just want to prove to themselves that they're really good at English. I will not be making videos specifically for preparing the C2 Proficiency. Just not enough people do it. I will be mainly focusing on the B2 First and the C1 Advanced. Those are the most popular ones. The good thing is, at all of the different levels, the Cambridge exams follow a very similar format. They all have 5 parts: speaking, listening, writing, reading, and use of English. Use of English is essentially grammar and vocabulary, and it's a bit horrible. There are variations in what type of question get asked at different levels, as you'd expect. And one notable thing about the Cambridge exam is that the speaking test is done in pairs, not individually. That's fine if you have a big group of students, you can pair them up and practice a lot. But if you're preparing an individual student, they might not know who their partner is going to be until the day of the exam. Most of the time that's not too big of a deal, but for some students who are shy or nervous about that kind of thing, it can be a bit of an issue. There's also the difficulty of the use of English. I find that's a part that trips up students who otherwise do really well. You see, the Cambridge exams are not for everyone. so it's always worth talking with your students and getting to know what their strengths and weaknesses are. Because in some cases, it might be better for them to do a different exam, if they have that choice. The Cambridge might be an external obligation, so you have to do it anyway. But if they just need to prove that they have a certain level of English, for example a B2, you might want to try the Trinity instead. What's the difference? Well, for a start, the Trinity doesn't have the use of English section. Plus, the speaking test is done individually, and actually the listening is done with the speaking and you answer the questions orally. So that can work a lot better for some students. I've found the Trinity is better for those who are really good at expressing themselves and understanding the gist of things. But for those who are hot on details and have a great control over grammar and vocabulary, the Cambridge is ideal. In the future, I'll be making a series on how you can prepare students for the Trinity exams too, and when that's done, I'll put it up there and down in the description. There are plenty of other exams too. TOEFL, TOEIC, IELTS, which I mentioned earlier, APTIS, and dozens more. Some are more popular in different parts of the world. For example, the TOEFL is big in North America. I'm not really keen on IELTS and TOEFL because they expire after 2 years. They're really for just entering the country to go to university or migrate there. The Trinity and the Cambridge, however, last forever. You don't need to take them again. And they're accepted pretty much everywhere in the world by every institution, so your students will get a lot of mileage out of them. So once you've decided which exam provider to go for, you need to determine what your student's ability level is and what level of exam they should be aiming for. Are they ready for B2 yet? Could they even try for C1? What do they feel comfortable with and what is required of them? Those are quite difficult things to answer, so the next video in this series, which is right here, is going to be doing a needs analysis for the Cambridge exams, and it's going to be talking about what resources you might need. But for now, I've been Will from Enchanted ESL, wishing you all the joy and success in your teaching. See ya!